Hey, it's DBJ, and this one's about Eclipse Phase and playing Firewall. Now, the game generally expresses Firewall as a semi-paramilitary organization hidden from the rest of society, and your job is to stop existential threats, threats to the existence of humanity, such as von Neumann machines, which are nanotech that has the ability to replicate its own nanotech so that it is infinitely creating machines, the creation and distribution of black holes and antimatter, and the use of quantum physics to affect reality. And, maybe even some genetically modified plagues out there. And as cool as that is, and of course, I apologize, the last one, of course, Firewall, is to stop the spread and discover information about the Titans, which is the pseudo-alien techno-virus that was downloaded and took over Earth's computer systems, very much like Skynet, and destroyed Earth's computer system and most of humanity on Earth. Now, that basis is cool, but not only is it so general, in my opinion, and of course the game creators had to do this. They had to make it very general to try to encompass a large number of environments and player choices. But I find that it's so vague that it's very hard to settle into, like, what do you do in the game? What do you do? And this comes from a comment sent to me. I'm going to really try to make sure you get credit for this. But this is a comment about player making sure that the person running the game gives the players a specific goal in mind, a specific theme, as you will. So an example would be, even if you want to play Firewall, making the characters researchers. Researchers, your job is to research information. You're not there to, pull out guns. You're not there to, of course you have self-defense. There are people who are going to stop you, and of course you want some action. But your job is to research technology. Or maybe you are exoplanet explorers. If you don't know, in the world of Eclipse Phase, they have these things called Pandora gates. And it does just what it sounds. It's a gate like Stargate that opens to another world, and you go through and you discover, and they land on these other planets, other star systems, other asteroids, and you go through and explore those various areas. But being black marketeers, hijackers, smugglers, a criminal syndicate, working for a group like the NSA, doing Blackops missions, I think you really need to focus down. Being celebrities, reality stars, being a group of traveling entertainers or entrepreneurs, anything like that. You could be merchants or politicians or work for a political bloc that's a minority in the system. You really got to focus down what you want your players to be and how they will handle themselves in the game. Because if you don't, your players will create so many bizarre and odd creations, and trying this to fit them all together can be difficult. But here's some of my top Firewall-specific genres, all right? Playing Firewall as security guards. Playing Firewall security guards would mean that the players are hired and sent on missions to maintain order. And that order may not be known by the residents living in habitats or in abandoned locations or even in the inner system. And although the public knows that Firewall will exist in this kind of genre, they don't give them very much credit or even much respect. You're just known as a security guard. You're a hired gun. And this hired gun could be by, say, maybe a galactic arm of government, and they want you as an agent to establish order, but there's no precedent for giving you access automatically Various organizations will not want to work with you, and so the players will now be kind of, hey, you're invited, but don't touch anything, kind of deal. And they have to fight through red tape, the bureaucracy, hacking, hiding, pretending to be others, sneaking around behind the scenes, knowing full well that if they upset the wrong people, they're going to get kicked out. And this can work really well, especially for players that don't mind being the underdog in this situation and having to, kind of strong arm people to get what they want, or to hide and sneak is a good example. Although, in the end, being considered quote-unquote a galactic security guard basically means that the rights of the people you're violating are truer than your own, because you must adapt or follow the orders of a higher power. There's also playing firewall as police officers. And playing firewall as a police officer is a step above the security guard, but you have to abide by certain rules and regulations. And this doesn't mean that you can't do like a black ops kind of mission, meaning that they're hiding, sneaking, lying, hacking, things of that nature. It just means that ultimately your players are agents of the law, and their job is to prove others wrong. And this works especially well if you just want to run players against the bad guys. You always have a bad guy out there who stole something, killed somebody, designing some kind of bad tech or uncovering some kind of technology, and the character's job is to go in, stop them, and in this case using firewalls police officers, that the players could hide their identities, but then they can also show credentials like, hey, I am a firewall agent and you are to respect me. And this can be used if you want to run a galactic police force that is maybe not well respected, but everyone wants firewall to exist to go after all of their enemies. So kind of like the United Nations here, where it may not have much power, but everyone wants the United Nations to work for them when things go wrong. And so your players could be those police officers. You are agents of the law. Your job is to go in. And of course, in Eclipse Phase and Transhuman Space for GURPS, and it begs the question. It begs the question of moral judgment. So sometimes the idea of transhuman is that technology has increased so fast that it has destroyed the very portions of our culture and throws them into question. So is it okay for a parent to create designer babies? Is it okay for a company who has the money to grow biological citizens that are weak-willed and only want to work for free? Is it legal for a pedophile to have a virtual reality filled with AI that play the role of children? Is it okay for these things to happen? Designer children is another question. If you have designer children and make them superhuman, what happens when those children get older? Would they then be the chosen few above the naturals, the gnats, the lesser folk that are us regular flats or normals? Those kind of questions come up, and so as a firewall police officer, there may become in a question whether your moral judgment is going against the rule of law, letting criminals go, or arresting people who you may feel are innocent. There's also using firewall as Blackops agents, like Green Beret, Navy SEAL, that kind of thing. In this instance, of course, you're going to end up having player characters who are going to be much more militant and military-minded, given larger weapons and armor, less diplomacy, but more or less going into dangerous situations. Think of the movie Aliens, things like that, Halo, where the characters are thrown into dangerous situations, fighting evil, meaning like they go into an empty habitat and there's a Titan virus that's, starting to turn back on the factories and building these killer robots or things like that. Those kind of games are fun. to an extent, if you want players who are really into the battle, if you're into especially using miniatures and battle maps, things like that. Yes, it can be horrific. It does limit your choices of diplomatic type missions and the more interpersonal role playing. Although you could insert players who into a game where they have to uncover a plot, knowing that say a terrorist action is going to happen, but they've got to keep quiet before the terrorist action goes off. So yes, using firewall as Black Ops operations is good. And the another way of using firewall would be CIA agents, and a little different than Black Ops, a little different than using as a police force, a security force. Using firewall as the CIA would be very much more subtle. In effect, the player characters are there to facilitate further action by outside forces. So the player characters there are to investigate, research, interrogate, uncover as much information as they can, and get out before the fit hits the shan. Just a way for, especially for people who love a lot more of the drama, a lot more of the interpersonal connections, using a lot of diplomacy, interrogation, persuasion type skills, getting into morphs and changing a lot to hide and sneak, to hack, and to go undercover is a great way of doing it. There may be some combat, but you want that combat to be subtle, taking people out silently and not alerting the authorities would be a good way of using a firewall to this for this instance. But yes, using firewall as CIA or maybe even NSA agents. And lastly, I would say firewall as the moral imperative. And I've hinted at this earlier in this tirade of mine. Using firewall as a moral imperative. I always thought it would be cool to have firewall controlled by an AI that is trying to basically decipher biological life. What is the moral imperative for humanity to exist, and what level will they exist? And using firewall this way would mean that the player characters come from extremely diverse backgrounds, and their job is to enforce a moral law that does not exist. So take, for example, you have an individual who's very rich, gets a habitat, and decides to populate that habitat with nothing but clones of himself. Is that right or wrong? And maybe the question would be, what is he using his clones for? Then you have a situation where someone, pedophile, gets a VR environment and fills it with AI that are children. And the player characters know full well that the legality of this individual buying and operating this VR system is legally okay, but morally incorrect. And so the players go around instilling a moral code through force, and Firewall's job is to corral and control, analyze, and decipher the vast moral landscape of this new solar system, and in effect is collating all this information into quote unquote what society should operate like. Now, this could be Firewall as police agents, meaning like Firewall is known, everyone knows who they are, and again, like the United Nations, these player characters are used to sick on other people, but no one wants Firewall pointed at themselves. But anyway, these are just different ideas that I had about using Firewall as agency, but you definitely want to make sure that the player characters know what kind of games they're going to be in, give them a focus, whether they're going to be smugglers, hey, like take the show Firefly. Hey, you guys own a ship and you take goods from one place to another. Make up a character. Hey, I'm a stowaway. I'm the captain. I I am a young entrepreneur trying to mine asteroids or comets or something. You can make all those kind of things. Or you can say, well, you know what? I want my characters to have resources, and firewall is a good way and good excuse for characters to have resources. And this is how I'm going to operate them. Firewall will be a public organization, and they will have access to goods and services, or firewall is completely hidden and completely secretive, and if anyone discovers who you are, we will deny your existence, you know, no matter what. But I would definitely put that on the table, let the players know what you want, decide on what you want, and heck, try all kinds of things out. But anyway, this is my little tirade, my little download on playing Firewall in Eclipse Phase, and I hope this is helpful to someone, because I know my mind just went off on a tangent. So anyway, create, don't destroy.